January 2020. New year, new decade, new you. You can't believe how pumped you are for what's sure to be the best decade ever. It is 2020 after all. That's as futuristic as you can get. We're talking hoverboards, self-driving cars, cure for cancer, and at long last, rumors that Keeping Up with the Kardashians is getting canceled. But just 1 month into 2020 and it becomes obvious that 2020 is not your friend. And just when coronavirus went and got the whole world down, 2020 came back with a vengeance to kick the world in the nuts. Global pandemic, India and China at each other's throat, North Korea threatening to launch nukes at everyone, and Keeping Up with the Kardashians is getting another season. Yeah, 2020 is the scumbag Steve of years. But here's a bunch of other terrible crap you probably missed in the worst year of your life. Number 10. People miraculously survived an airline disaster. There were a handful of disasters in the skies this year, with the worst one being the pre-virus mid-air explosion of Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752. All of the 176 people on that flight were killed, obliterated after their plane was hit by 2 missiles fired by the Iranian armed forces. We guess most of you heard about that one, but you might not have heard about the disaster that happened on May 22nd. That involved Pakistan International Airlines Flight 8303. The flight took off from Lahore and was in the air just over an hour when it put out a mayday call saying that it had lost its engines and would have to make an emergency landing. The next thing that happened was the aircraft was seen hurtling towards a neighborhood in Karachi. Like a burning phoenix, its wings on fire, and it crashed into buildings filled with people. Amazingly, only one person in the neighborhood died. Maybe even more amazing is the fact that 2 people from the 99 passengers on board survived. One of them later recounted how the pilot had told the passengers that the landing was gonna likely be troublesome. He said the next thing he knew, he was climbing through the rubble of broken buildings and he could hear people crying and screaming. Someone grabbed him and he was whisked off to the nearest hospital. It's generally thought that the back is the best possible place to be sitting if you're on a plane that has to make an emergency landing, but the 2 survivors were both sitting near the front in seats 1C and 8F. And that's just a warm-up. Far worse is yet to come. Number 9. Serial killers didn't go away. Serial killers don't generally take a break during a pandemic, although their hunting grounds during lockdowns might be less densely populated. It's hard to say just how many serial killers are active at any given time. Some experts think that in 2020 in the USA alone, there were possibly 2,000 serial killers. A former chief of the FBI's Elite Serial Crime Unit said in 2015, there were maybe 25 to 50 serial killers active that year. In 2020, they didn't just go away. Take, for instance, the smiley face murders, something we imagine not many of you have heard about. This creepy case involves young men in the Midwest who were found dead in bodies of water. Did they merely drown? Some investigators think no. You see, the bodies of some 45 men were found dead in the water, but the thing was, they all fit a similar profile. They were young, white, athletic, and popular. Maybe they were just drunk because a lot of victims had been at parties prior to getting wet. What's super strange, though, is close to where they were found, there was graffiti nearby of a smiley face. If they were killed right now, there is someone or some people out there that you should be very afraid of. Other estimates tell us that 2% of all murders in the US each year are committed by serial killers. It can just take a long time to track them down. Take the case of Samuel Little. He started killing in 1970 and didn't stop until he was arrested in 2012. The FBI said that he was behind at least 50 murders, but Little himself has claimed to have killed 93 people. How many people like him were doing their thing in 2020? It's likely there were quite a few. Number 8. Regular murders didn't go away either. 2020 isn't over as we write this, even though many of you wish it likely was. It's too early to put together the murder statistics for the year, but right now the FBI is saying that in the US, the murder rate has increased by 15% from the rate in 2019. If you think that's bad, a report released by the Council on Criminal Justice stated over the summer in 27 big cities in the US, the murder rate increased by 53%. Many people have asked what's going on in some cities such as Chicago and New York, where murders have dramatically increased. The answer is no one really knows. Maybe it was a result of lockdowns, maybe it was connected to other protests, maybe it was the hot summer weather. Others think that lockdowns might have caused an upswing in domestic violence, while others have said they've interrupted the flow of illegal drugs. Another thing is people have been buying more guns this year than in previous years. It will be interesting to see what happens in 2021. Now for something out of this world. Number 7. We were nearly hit by an asteroid. In August this year, NASA said the Earth came pretty close to being whacked by an asteroid. The near-Earth asteroid actually set a record in that it came closer to the Earth than any other NEA NASA has ever seen before. It measured around 10 to 20 feet in width. Something like that could cause some amount of damage if it were to actually hit the Earth. But the good news is that NASA said it would have likely broken up if it had gotten any closer. The bad news is NASA has said at some point the Earth is going to get slammed by a piece of space rock big enough to do significant damage to a country or a continent. You might have missed that while you were watching all that virus news, but there were articles this year talking about NASA's double asteroid redirection test. That basically entails firing a rocket into an asteroid that's gotten a little too close for comfort. Okay, it's time to get biblical. Number 6. Fires, floods, famine. If you read the Bible, you might be familiar with the book of Revelations. The writers of the text promised humankind one day there will be a kind of reckoning. There's a talk of things such as floods, fires, famine, pestilence, war, and blood. A lot of blood. 2020 hasn't been a huge year for wars, but as for the rest, it certainly met its disaster quota. As you all know, it's been quite a year for pestilence, but that's not all. This year, the US media said California experienced its worst wildfires in decades. The LA Times wrote that the fires were bigger, more destructive, and they led to the worst air quality in 20 years. Over the last decade, the fires in California have been pretty bad pretty much every year, but 2020 could have been the worst. Prior to the virus getting going, Australia also experienced some of the worst wildfires. If you look at the fires that ranged in some parts of Southeast Asia, they were bad too, although a lot of that had to do with agricultural burning. All in all, it was a bad year for fire. It was a much worse year for animals, with 500 million of them dying in fires in Australia alone. As for floods, it wasn't a great year either. Floods in East Africa took 453 lives and destroyed the homes of almost 500,000 people. In China, at least 219 people died in floods, and over 54,000 people were left homeless. Many regions were affected, with experts saying the floods were the worst since 1998. Flooding in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh was also especially bad in 2020. Hundreds of people died, and around 4.5 million people were displaced from their homes. Was it a bad year for famine? Well, the COVID-19 pandemic had its hand in people not getting enough food. The World Food Program reported in September that with the combination of COVID, climate change, and ongoing conflicts, close to 270 million people could starve. So there you go. 2020 was a terrible year for the threesome of fires, floods, and famine. The next problem is making matters much worse. Number 5. Locusts caused unbelievable damage. Swarms of locusts ravaging crops are also something you can read about in the Bible. In case you didn't know, 2020 was a bad year for those eating machines. In 2019 and 2020, a locust plague spread throughout parts of the Middle East and Africa. Swarms of the insects also feasted in South America. 23 countries were affected in all. The reason the massive swarms exist is due to a few factors, but it's mainly because there was more rainfall than usual in some parts of the world, and that created perfect conditions for the locusts to breed. Not only that, restrictions on travel during the pandemic created a perfect storm. Help couldn't be received where help was needed. Some countries have seen the worst infestations for decades, as people in Ethiopia, Somalia, India, and Kenya will attest. Getting sick from a virus might be the last thing on your mind when you see a swarm of 80 million locusts heading toward you. Such a swarm can eat as much in one day as 35,000 people. Number 4. A hyperactive volcano. It wouldn't be a bad year without at least one volcano erupting, and that happened at the start of the year in the Philippines. The Taal volcano blew its lid and scared residents senseless when they saw great plumes of ash and steam filling the sky for miles above their heads. If you think you've got problems, imagine living next to a pressure cooker that has the power to wipe you out. It was a big deal. The airport in Manila was closed. Thousands of people were told they had to be evacuated from their homes. The authorities issued a level 4 warning, and with level 5 being the worst of all, it meant get the hell away from that thing now. They also said the volcano could spew again soon, and the next explosion could be even worse. Unfortunately, some people couldn't just get up and leave. Others wanted to make sure their cows and pigs were okay. That's one of the reasons people died. In all, 39 people lost their lives. Only one of them died as a direct result of the initial explosion, while others perished because they stayed home. Now we'll talk about something that was a world first. Number 3. The Big Bang. It started with a fire at the port of Beirut. The fire got bigger, and there was an explosion followed by some smaller ones. A few people got out their smartphones and recorded the fire, and thanks to them and CCTV, one of the most shocking things ever captured on video happened. That was a massive explosion, followed by a supersonic blast wave that wrecked buildings in its path. Then we saw a huge mushroom cloud form in the air. It was remarkable. It was like nothing we'd ever seen, and that's why we have to include it on this list even though you probably don't know at all about it. If you don't know the ins and outs, the blast left behind a 460-foot wide crater. Its depth was around 141 feet. It destroyed just about everything in its vicinity. In fact, it was so powerful it blew out windows 5 miles away. One of the worst things was the explosion destroyed silos full of grain, a loss that worsened food shortages in a country already suffering from a financial crisis and the impact of the COVID-19 crisis. It was called one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history and said to be only about 10 times smaller in intensity than the nuclear bomb dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima in 1945. Poor storage of ammonium nitrate was to blame, but the question a lot of people asked is why weren't they told about this storage? In total, 204 people died, 6,500 people were injured, and it left 300,000 people without a home. Some of those that died were the firemen attending to the original fire, and unfortunately for them, they didn't know about the huge amount of ammonium nitrate. This next one could be a problem for the future. Number 2. Tweet, tweet, boom. You should ask yourself this question. Could problems arise if some of the most powerful people in the world were hacked and their social media accounts posted content not from them? Yes, you're thinking, that would be a problem. Some Twitter accounts hacked in July included billionaire Elon Musk, the richest person in the world Jeff Bezos, and the second richest person Microsoft founder Bill Gates. Other hacked accounts included the then US presidential candidate Joe Biden and former President Barack Obama. It turned out that the masterminds behind the hack were 2 young folks from the US and a British teenager. The 3 kids managed to pull off the worst social media hack of all time. Okay, so they only did it to scam a bit of money, but what if someone could hack a very important person and post a dangerous message? The last thing we need is a declaration of nuclear war via Twitter. No war would be started this way, but as some security experts said, an account in the wrong hands could cause a global security crisis. Number 1. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Just kidding. After everything you heard about today, what that couple of lovebirds is doing isn't something you need to be thinking about. Now you need to watch this. Why is the government terrified of this hacker? Or have a look at this. Worst natural disasters in human history.